In the news tonight, the Cabinet approves new urban and industrial plans in Zarqa and gives the go-ahead to service projects. Syrian aircraft attacks rebel strongholds as a new opposition leadership seeks world recognition. And Israeli aircraft attack targets in Gaza. More rocket attacks on Israeli border towns. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. The Cabinet has given the go-ahead to a number of development projects in the city of Zarqa, including expanding the municipality's eastern and southern boundaries. Holding its weekly meeting in Zarqa under Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, the Cabinet left open the issue of annexing the custodian of the two holy mosques city to the Zarqa municipality. In a meeting attended by local officials, the minister adopted the rehabilitation and development of the Zarqa River Basin as a national project and asked the Minister of Planning and International Cooperation to draw up a master plan within a month. The Cabinet also approved a tentative plan to launch an industrial estate in Zarqa and asked the Ministry of Industry and Trade and the Jordan Industrial Estate Corporation to start negotiations with the Social Security Corporation to proceed with the project. It also decided to raise a housing fund for underprivileged families in addition to development of state land, setting up a military museum and a home for the elderly, as well as a industrial wastewater treatment station. Mansour told the meeting that Zarqa has a myriad of problems, top of which is overcrowding, land ownership and access to utility services.
ها هنا محافظة جادة مجتهدة منتجة.
This governorate is determined, productive, but has its own problems that no one can deny. Among these is an unprecedented congestion that has no match anywhere in the kingdom. There are also the problems of land and people's access to utility services under the excuse that they don't own the land or the apartments they live in. These are problems we cannot stay silent on or afford to leave unaddressed. Simply, we cannot ignore them. There are dozens or hundreds of people who suffer of this problem. So the Cabinet calls for shedding the light on this case, which is not exclusively common in Zarqa, but in Amman and other areas.
5 opposition parties have said they will participate in parliamentary elections to be held on January the 23rd. The landmark polls will usher in the country's first parliamentary government, a key milestone of the kingdom's political reform. Speaking to JTV Arabic News, opposition, nationalist and leftist parties' chiefs stressed that voting is expression of true citizenship. They said Parliament is the right place for change and monitoring governments and policies. Jordan said it is disappointed by a British verdict not to extradite Omar Mahmoud Uthman, better known as Abu Qatada, to face terrorism charges in Jordan. Minister of Justice Ghalib al-Zu'bi said Jordan had offered guarantees for a fair trial in case Abu Qatada was deported to the country. Zu'bi expressed Jordan's readiness to thoroughly examine the verdict and the next steps with British authorities. Described as an enormous risk to U.S. security, Abu Qatada won a last-minute appeal against deportation to Jordan. A senior judge at a special London court said there was a risk that evidence obtained using torture may be used against Abu Qatada and he may not receive a fair trial in Jordan. The ruling, said British Interior Minister Theresa May, had been wrong not to revoke an earlier deportation ruling against Qatada and allowed his appeal.
Speaker, torture has been illegal in Jordan since 2006, and last year the Jordanian constitution was amended to make clear that not only is torture forbidden, any statement extracted from a person under duress or the threat thereof shall neither be taken into consideration nor relied on. That is a direct quotation from Article 8.2 of the Jordanian Constitution. Despite these assurances, despite the determination of the Jordanian government and judiciary to allow Qatada a fair trial, despite the change to the Jordanian constitution that expressly prohibits torture and the use of evidence obtained by torture. In the absence of clear case law, Mr Justice Mitting still found in Qatar's favour. In doing so, we believe he applied the wrong legal test.
The world's largest disaster relief network said Turkey needs support to provide winter shelter and food to up to 170,000 Syrians who could seek refuge from a prolonged civil war. Some 9,000 Syrians have fled in a time span of 24 hours between last Thursday and Friday alone. They joined the exodus that has taken place after intensified fighting between Syrian government forces and armed rebels. On these developments and more, Laith Shanqiti has a story.
Aware of the danger, but drawn by curiosity, huddled on a rooftop and gulped as artillery rounds crashed into the earth yards from the flimsy fence that separates Turkish border town from Syria. In the 20 months since the revolt began, one by one, the sleepy Turkish towns and villages up and down the frontier have watched helplessly as the Syrian war edges ever closer. As Syrian jets and helicopters attacked the rebel-held town of Ras Al Ain, some bombs landed just meters from the Turkish border, sending scores of civilians fleeing into Turkey. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 12, including 7 rebels, were killed in the airstrikes. The village fell to rebels on Thursday during an advance into Syria's Arab and Kurdish northeast. Turkey is growing increasingly concerned about security along its border with Syria in an area of the southeast where Ankara is also fighting an emboldened Kurdish insurgency. Ankara says it has fired back in retaliation to stray gunfire and mortar rounds landing on Turkish soil. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the alliance would do what it takes to protect and defend member Turkey.
Turkey can rely on NATO solidarity. We have all plans in place to defend and protect Turkey, our ally, if needed. But I understand and appreciate that when it comes to such plans, I can't go into details.
On another side of the border, Israel's army fired tank shells into Syria and scored direct hits in response to a Syrian mortar shell that struck the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Military sources said Syrian mobile artillery was directly hit in the incident. It was the second time in 2 days that Israel has responded to what it said was stray Syrian fire. On the diplomatic front, and after days of talks in Qatar, Syria's new opposition leadership, painfully forged under Arab and Western pressure, set out to recognition. Reformist Damascus cleric Muaz al-Khatib flew to Cairo to seek the Arab League's blessing for the new assembly after he was unanimously elected its leader. He said the first step towards recognition will take place at the Arab League. The body would then seek endorsement from Arab and Western foes of the Syrian regime as the Friends of Syria and from the UN General Assembly. Laith Shanqiti for the News at 10.
In Cairo, Arab foreign ministers met for talks on Syria and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The meeting may provide the opportunity for the group to officially recognize the newly formed coalition of Syrian opposition groups. International envoy on Syria Lakhdar Brahimi met Arab League chief Nabil al-Arabi ahead of the ministerial meeting. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is also expected to address the meeting, which will be joined by European foreign ministers tomorrow. Foreign Minister Nasser Joudeh will lead Jordan's delegation to the meeting. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said he will press ahead with a Palestinian bid for United Nations recognition as a non-member state. Abbas explained his decision to U.S. President Barack Obama in a phone conversation. The Palestinian Authority circulated a draft resolution to UN members that calls for upgrading its UN status to that of observer state, despite objections by the United States and Israel. Obama reaffirmed his commitment to Middle East peace and his strong support for direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, with the objective of 2 states living side by side in peace and security. Israeli aircraft hit targets in the Gaza Strip, but there were no reports of casualties. Israel said the planes hit a smuggling tunnel, a building to store weapons, and a rocket launching site. Sporadic missile fire in the Gaza Strip also hit southern Israel for a 4th straight day. Egypt is trying to secure a truce, and Israel is warning it would toughen its response if the violence continued. Lu'ay Barqar has more.
A house in southern Israel is hit by a Palestinian rocket from the Gaza Strip. There was no damage but no injuries. It came amid warnings by Israeli leaders of a tough response to the latest surge in violence. The rocket struck in the town of Netivut, ending a brief overnight lull to the 3 days of fighting, which has left 6 Palestinians, 4 of them civilians, and 40 wounded. 8 Israelis have also been wounded in the cross-border attacks. Hamas movement governs in Gaza, but many of the missiles fired out of the coastal enclave are launched by other groups, with today's strike claimed by the Salafi organization and the Shura Council of the Mujahideen. On Saturday, a Palestinian missile strike wounded 4 Israeli troops on a jeep patrol along the Gaza boundary, triggering army shelling in which the 4 Palestinian civilians died. In turn, dozens of mortars and rockets were launched at Israel, and the Israeli military carried out a series of airstrikes throughout Gaza. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system knocked down a number of longer-range rockets. Egypt has been trying to broker a ceasefire between the Palestinian factions and Israel. The residents hope for calm, but expect little.
As for the recent escalation in the Gaza Strip, this is normal. We are used to this by the occupation. We call on the Arab League and the United Nations to stop this escalation.
There is always a call for calm, but it never brings results. The Egyptian side is always exerting effort for calm between the Palestinians and Israelis, but without results.
Israel has launched war on Gaza 4 years ago and also threatened to attack this time. But right-wing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may be reluctant a week ahead of the January 22nd general election that opinion polls currently predict he will win. Louis Balkar for the News at 10.
The Lebanese army is patrolling the streets in the southern city of Sidon as tension remains after armed fighting between supporters of the Salafist Sheikh and supporters of Hezbollah. 3 people were killed yesterday when fighting broke in Sidon between followers of the 2 groups. Tensions have increased in Lebanon against the backdrop of the Syrian revolt. The fighting began when followers of Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir began removing banners put up by Hezbollah fans of the Shiite religious occasion of Ashura. Iran launched large-scale air defense drills in the country's eastern half. The war games come amid heightened tensions between Tehran and Washington over a military incident in the Gulf reported last week. The maneuvers will include about 8,000 troops, drawn both from Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and its regular military. Various kinds of fixed, mobile and tactical long-range radars and fixed, tactical and airborne electronic surveillance systems will participate in this exercise. It's also meant to test Iran's bombers, refueling planes and unmanned aircraft. Fighter jets will also participate in the maneuvers. For car lovers out there, Lamborghini unveiled its new model, the Lamborghini Aventador LP 704, during a world preview in Singapore. The new roadster goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 3 seconds. With a 12-cylinder, 700-horsepower engine, the car takes it to a top speed of 350 kilometers per hour. The Lamborghini hit showrooms in the late spring to early summer and is expected to sell at $445,000.
Big, normally aspirated V12s.
Both for the first time this year in Singapore, we are.
Switzerland beat Belgium in producing the world's longest milfei of 1,221 meters. Since 1992, Belgium held the world record. Together with a team of 200 volunteers and professionals, Geneva baker and pastry maker Gilles Desplanches put together the dessert. The different parts of the millefeuille consisted of 3,600 meters of biscuit divided into 3 layers, with a layer of chocolate cream and dark chocolate cream in between, and topped with red. The team is hoping to raise more than $1,000 from the sale of the millefeuille to go to the Swiss Breast Cancer Association. We begin with Argentine football that saw Vélez Sarsfield beat Godoy Cruz 2-1 to move to the top of the championship. Vélez, who fought back from Alexis Castro's early strike for the side from Mendoza, snatched the championship lead that Newell's old held for 7 weeks. Ferreira equalized midway through the first half and in the 74th minute scored the winner, his 7th goal of the championship and his team's 4th successive win. Vélez now have 29 points from their 14 games. Former world MotoGP champion Casey Stoner bid his farewell to motorcycle racing at an awards ceremony in Valencia after the season's final Grand Prix. Stoner, who announced his retirement earlier in the season, received the bronze medal for 3rd place in this year's championship. This year's champion, Spain's Jorge Lorenzo, added his name to a silver tower comprising a brick for each champion. The Yamaha rider sealed his 2nd MotoGP title by cruising a runner-up finish at the Australian Grand Prix last month.
Add his piece of history to the MotoGP Champions Tower. Here we go.
And finally, a quick look at the weather forecast. Chilly tonight in central and northern Jordan and cloudy in the south and east with possible scattered showers. Winds will be northwesterly moderate. Although temperatures will slightly rise tomorrow, it will remain chilly in hilly areas with 15 degrees Celsius in Amman. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cloudy conditions tonight, but mild tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. The meteorology department warns of poor visibility during the night and in the early morning hours due to fog formation over highlands. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The Cabinet approves new urban and industrial plans in Zarqa and gives the go-ahead to service projects. Syrian aircraft attack rebel strongholds as a new opposition leadership seeks world recognition. And Israeli aircraft attack targets in Gaza, drawing more rocket attacks on Israeli border towns. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. Aliya Tuqan, thank you for joining us and have a good night.